Hello, everyone, and welcome to our program. Today we have with us one of the most effective ministry teams in all of New England. They have been serving the city of Boston and many other places, not just in Boston, but all over the world, really, for many years, and doing absolutely spectacular work in a lot of different areas of ministry. We have with us Doug Hall, Dr. Doug Hall of the Emmanuel Gospel Center, and his wife Judy Hall. And we have the privilege of interviewing them and hopefully learning a lot of things about ministry in an urban setting. Emmanuel Gospel Center has distinguished itself over many years for its ability to reach to a diversity of groups in the city and even beyond. And as we carry on these conversations with key leaders in our region, we want to hear from them because they have a very unique perspective to add to our conversation. And as I say, Doug is actually president of the Emmanuel Gospel Center located in Boston's South End. And he and Judy have been serving there for, I understand, the last 47 years. You came in 1964
That's
to
correct.
Boston, and Boston must have been a very different place at that time than what it is now.
Very different. You wouldn't believe.
How would you say it has changed? What kinds of things?
Well,
Have you seen progress, or are things the same or worse? How would you catalog it?
Well, people don't realize that, we're living in the South End, for example. You can hardly afford to buy a house in the South End. You can pay $80,000 for a parking space, Mm-hmm. But when we came, it was a slum area, and it was a place no one wanted to live. Many people didn't want to live. It was a place that it was the 60s. There was riots. There was all kinds of crime in the streets. The city was filled with slums.
So you didn't come to Boston because of the real estate values?
No. But yeah, there were many slums in Boston of the type, we have poor areas now, but the type of slum we had in the 60s and 70s doesn't exist in the city today at all. And it's intriguing from the standpoint of Christianity that at one point we placed a map showing where all the church plants were happening and where the worst slums were. They completely overlapped. And so what happened was, with the enormous work of the Spirit of God in the city of Boston, many cities were transformed in the process, physically. Christians became part of community organization work, and all sorts of things happened.
Well, you've been a student of the city for a long time, and how groups, ethnic groups particularly, expand the gospel through the relationships and the networks that are established and so on. I think you've gained a lot of insight and intelligence, so to speak, about how the gospel is spread. And of course, EGC, the Emmanuel Gospel Center, has been so deeply involved in what has been termed the quiet revival. And I'd love to hear you say a little bit, or Judy, regarding your experience with the quiet revival. What is that concept? What does it allude to, number one? It's kind of almost like an oxymoron, the quiet revival. No, we expect revivals to be spectacular and spirit filled and so on and so forth, which I'm sure this has been as well. But this is a different concept.
We call it the quiet revival
because
it existed for almost 15, 18 years before we even discovered it. And we discovered it, in 89. 89.
So you date that to about, the 70s or so? Beginning?
It began
1965.
60 in the mid-60s, and it began with the Spanish community. Many Spanish Pentecostal churches and so forth. They were the first ones to grow. The Spanish churches grew from 11 to 22 in a year and a half, and then to 36 or something. I can't remember the exact figures, but it was dramatic growth within 3 years. And we noticed that, but it didn't impress us. But that was the beginning of it, and it probably was spurred by the Spanish church initially in Boston.
And Judy, when you came to Boston with Doug, did you expect that you would be involved in such a powerful move of God? I mean, how did you feel coming into the city? And did you see yourself as a ministry figure as well, or you simply accompanying your husband to come into the city? How has your own understanding of the city and ministry evolved over these years?
We came to the city because it was a free apartment. Doug was...
I'm totally disappointed. I thought you had a call from God, you saw a vision.
Well, I won't say it wasn't a call from God, because I always loved cities. In fact, when we got engaged, I said, "You're not going to make me live in the suburbs, are you?" Because I really wanted to live in cities. I always loved cities. So when we moved out to New England to go to Gordon Divinity School, I was always intrigued with Boston, which was nearby. And when we had an opportunity to live in Boston and have a free apartment, and all you had to do was preach at the little old ladies who came into the mission every night.
Let me stop you there and pick up again, because you speak about that mission, and that was really the origins of the Emmanuel Gospel Center.
Yeah.
It precedes your coming to Boston. Tell me a little bit about that, and then we'll go back to your initial
The Gospel
point.
Center was started in 1938 in the South End, and it was designed to be a preaching station, a place where it was mainly for working people, but a place where they could come at night and have a gospel service and hear the hear the gospel. And so it had been going for a number of years, but it always had problems with leadership. The leaders would only stay a year or two.
Sort of traditional way of doing the gospel. No, the little mission in the city, preaching the gospel, and so on and so forth.
I have to correct my wife, though.
Good. Go for it.
We didn't come simply because there was a place to stay. We actually were praying for months before we came, and we had a group of people praying for us to find God's will. We thought the thing was for us to go to India. But God saw that we could do more in India by being in Boston, which it turned out. But we went to the center and talked to the people there. And then we went out in the front after talking to the people about taking over the mission. And God said, "You want to be a missionary? Here's a mission field. Let's get started." I mean, He didn't say it audibly, but those are the words that challenged us at that point. And of course, the thing about it was, this was the mid-'60s and early '70s, the white exodus was occurring. And so white people were moving out of the city, and the blacks and others were moving into the city. And so when we we're actually white people, and
I hadn't noticed.
We moved into the city when all the whites were moving out. We weren't too smart, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, that's really what happened.
And yet, one of the things I think has distinguished the Emmanuel Gospel Center is its extreme sensitivity to the ethnic groups in the city, to the point that you have been able to reach a wide diversity of groups who respect the Emmanuel Gospel Center highly. And right now, for example, you have a very, very powerful alliance with the Black Ministry Alliance, and other ethnic groups as well. Our own congregation, which I pastor, has been impacted a lot by the Emmanuel Gospel Center. We have benefited from your own ministry. So that must have been kind of a journey for you to become sensitized to that ethnic part of the city.
Yeah, there really are well over 100 different countries represented in the Christian church in Boston. And so our original vision for coming to the city was to see the Bible happen. We wanted to not just understand the Bible, read the Bible, study the Bible. We wanted to see it occur in the city. And I can say that the most exciting thing of my entire ministry life is that we have seen it happen. We've seen the city reached. We've seen it go and do an Acts 1:8 thing from to the region in the world. We've seen the Bible happen, and it happens through all this huge diversity of ethnic people, because they were the source of it. Because, as these people were coming in, a lot of the mainline systems were dying. When we did our first survey to figure out how many churches were, people said, "Well, you're going to discover how the church is dying, because all the mainline churches are dying," and had lost churches. But we did the survey, and yes, there were a lot of churches dying, but the overall growth was 50%. And so it was really shocking.
Well, let's take a break briefly, and let's continue when we return.